Just curious, if anyone has a guitar that seems to take the eerie take. My old SG came from a guy town pawn shop via then the Downey and Alt dude who sold it to my bass player. Dude died shortly afterwards. Seems the ex will act funny sometimes, that is all. One gig that was on Hendrix's birthday refused to stay in tune and I had to change guitars. The next day it was fine. More than once it has acted inexplicably strangely to me. I don't really get into this stuff, but thought it would be fun this time of year to see if anyone else has a funky ex that vibes from the beyond. A buddy of mine sold his red 61 Gibson S335 because he had later learned that the two previous owners had killed themselves. ATW. This was back in the early 80s, a bit before the advent of the vintage Gibson/Fender craze.
My 1961 Stratocaster, especially when she was in her original case. She doesn't like other women. She scratched a few straight coil from the edge of a Ludlow EOS string. One woman had a small hole punched in her fingertip as she studied the guitar. My wife one night as she removed the guitar from our bed, same thing but somehow under the front edge of her fingernail, and another at different gig on a different strings, an almost 6-inch long scratch on the forearm, kinda deep, bled profusely, and later required a tetanus shot. Caught her as she walked by me while the guitar was strapped over my shoulder. I checked the string in question. I swear I could run my finger over the edge of the tuner shaft and along the edge of the string end and not be scratched at all. It didn't even catch on my silk shirt when I brushed against it while putting her on her stand. That guitar's original case became too worn, so the case has been retired. Two women, both of whom, while admiring the guitar as it sat in its case, had the lid fall closed and the tooth on the latch caught him right in the middle of the back of the hand. Ouch. The last one was just too creepy. It was the manager of a band I used to be in. She'd already been scratched by the guitar that same day. As we were packing up, I leaned my Les Paul in its case along the wall at the top of short 4 steps, flight of stairs leading to the front door. Leaning parallel against that guitar was the 1961 Strat in its case. Our manager had just made a comment about my bitch guitar that scratched her earlier. As she turned to say goodbye, the Strat case fell just laid in the floor at the top of the stairs. When she turned to leave, our manager didn't see the case and stumbled over it. She took a mild tumble down the stairs, bruising mostly her pride. She told me when she looked up the stairs, the edge of the Strat's case was peering over the lip of the top stair, sort of mocking her. May you say what you will, but my wife will not touch that guitar. Hasn't for over 20 years. Tease.
One of my friends has a rig that he swears is haunted. One of my friends has a rig that he swears is haunted. When the guitar is in his house, he has problems with all of his other gear, from no tuning stability to speakers blowing that aren't being pushed and tubes frying. When the guitar is out/borrowed, no issues arise. He left it at my house for 2 months and I had all sorts of issues with my other gear during those times. After he took return on it, he sold it and everything is back to normal. Okay, I know this is going to sound like those urban myth stories, and I have heard a variation of it in the internet, but many years ago, when I was still in high school, I had an old nylon string classical guitar that I used to lean against the wall in my bedroom. One night, the whole family was out and I was alone in the house, in the kitchen, and I heard soft strumming coming from my bedroom. I freaked and ran to the bedroom to see, in the darkness, my guitar still leaning up against the wall by itself, soft notes emanating from it. I had to suppress all urges to run screaming out of the house, and I flipped on the light, and that's when I noticed a large bottom moth trapped in the sound hole flapping away. I still think it took hours for the blood to stop pounding in my ears, and for my hands to stop shaking.
So this happened just now. My husband, my son, and I are just getting ready for bed, and we were just laying down saying goodnight, and all of a sudden his guitar plays one note and we both are like, what the heck? And he walks over to the guitar and looks if anything fell on it or if the string snapped, but nothing. So I was thinking if it could have been his grandpa. His grandpa visits sometimes and he comes back to lay down. All of a sudden I hear a man whisper in my right ear. I could not make out what he was saying. It was a very faint whisper, but it did sound like my husband's deceased grandpa.
One of my friends has a rig that he swears is haunted. One of my friends has a rig that he swears is haunted. When the guitar is in his house, he has problems with all of his other gear, from no tuning stability to speakers blowing that aren't being pushed and tubes frying. When the guitar is out / borrowed, no issues arise. He left it at my house for 2 months and I had all sorts of issues with my other gear during those times. After he took return of it, he sold it and everything is back to normal. Okay, I know this is going to sound like those urban myth stories, and I have heard a variation of it in the internet, but many years ago, when I was still in high school, I had an old nylon string classical guitar that I used to lean against the wall in my bedroom. One night, the whole family was out and I was alone in the house, in the kitchen, and I heard soft strumming coming from my bedroom. I freaked and ran to the bedroom to see, in the darkness, my guitar still leaning up against the wall by itself, soft notes emanating from it. I had to suppress all urges to run screaming out of the house, and I flipped on the light, and that's when I noticed a large boggle moth trapped in the sound hole flapping away. I still think it took hours for the blood to stop pounding in my ears, and for my hands to stop shaking.
I have a Gibson Firebrand SG that belonged to a murdered man, or one who committed suicide. I worked with his father, and apparently this young man, early 20s I think, was mixed up with drugs and drug dealers. He was found in their home, shot in the head, looking like a suicide, but the parents had cause to think otherwise. For years afterward, the mother would ask anyone in the neighborhood if they knew anything about him, looking for answers. She died before I met the father, and worked with him for 2 years before he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Because he knew I played guitar, and probably because I was the age his son was, he gave me his son's guitar and amp that he kept all those years, and then died a few months later.
I feel you. Autumn 1986, I had just moved into the dorm for my first semester away at college. I had been playing my guitar, Electra / Leestone Phoenix straighter than Orion Distortion / PV Backstage Plus. I went out to get a drink and use the restroom, leaving my guitar on the sofa and the amp on. When I returned, I heard a voice, a creature. Shimmery, echoing sound. Talking about the end times and the book of Revelations. Man, I can tell you the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I must have stood there, in the doorway, for 5 solid minutes. White as a sheet, no doubt. I finally had the nerve to step over and see if adjusting the volume would do anything. It did, then it occurred to me to check the reverb, which was cranked. When I turned the verb down past about 6, the voice began fading. It was about then that I heard an announcer give the call sign for the radio station. My reverb pan had caught it. I sat down and proceeded to attempt the return to normalcy.
This is a sad story. A friend of mine bought an Epiphone 61 Casino but with a Bixby and mini humbuckers way back in 1973. The owner was a great guitarist, big hits etc. but died of heroin. My mate's mom met him in a hospital and friend purchased said guitar. It was unbelievable. My mate played so well the whole school shut down while he played. We and others formed a band. 1 gig led to 2, 2 to 4 and so on. We were really headed for success. However, one bloke ruined our young band and my mate with the Epiphone went on to being a heroin user. He died by age 35. None of us wanted that guitar. It had a curse, so to speak. P.S. Early Epiphones, I had an acoustic Texan, had the on the pickguard NOT embossed but sent him like Gibson. I wouldn't ever touch an Epiphone made in the last 30 years. Gibson made a mess of them and are now trying to rectify their cheap ones. I'll give them a decade.
Haunted. I too had an M back in the 70s, a custom 100 watt head with a string reverb that began talking one night. Turned out it was channeling the truckers using their CD radios on the highway a few miles away. One day I started my 4-track, put the end on the far end of my basement, cranked the reverb and the volume, and recorded about 12 minutes of it, also playing. I called the piece Voices in the Reverb. Other than that, I've had an old MIJGP that's...
Hi, you've reached Brad Manning at my deployment